Welcome to Talking Business, a podcast produced in Melbourne, Australia. The podcast is available on the Acast site, my own website, the Apple Podcast Store, or wherever you go to get your podcasts. Or you can get it at the Business Acumen website at www.businessacumen.biz or at Banking Day. This week's Talking Business is brought to you by multi-award-winning law firm McDonald Legal, experts in the areas of dispute resolution and commercial and property law. For the most exclusive access to leading economists and business leaders from around the world, subscribe to Talking Business from our website, leongettler.com. I am Leon Gettler. My job is to review and monitor the week's news in business, finance and economics. I bring it all to you every week. This is episode number 6 in our series for 2023, and today's date is Friday, March the 10th. First, I'll be talking to Andy Squires, the CEO of Securely, the app that provides tradies and subcontractors with a payment platform. And I'll be talking to economist Nicholas Green about how the RBA can control inflation without rate rises. But now let's talk to Andy Squires.
Andy, tell us about this Securely app that you built for tradies.
So Securely app. So we realise there's a massive problem in Australia for tradies that aren't getting paid. We see it all the time. We hear about it on media and social networks everywhere, where tradies have either been ripped off or vice versa, that customers are not getting work done for what they're expecting from tradies. So we developed an app that can solve this problem.
So how does it work?
So it works quite simply. We tried to simplify it as best we can, so it's quite easy for all parties to use. So if a tradie comes to a client, it gets offered to do a job for that client. They work together to agree on their price, the quote, or whatever that job is. Once they agree on that, the tradie then just uploads a copy of his photo or word description of the quote into the app, and also his client who he's doing the work for. So that then gets a message directly through to the client via email to say that you've had a job being proposed from your tradie. Do you accept this job to be done? And once the client accepts the job, they hit that button in their email through the app, deposit the funds for the job into the app. The tradie then gets notification that his job has been accepted and he can move forward to complete that work. Once the work's completed, he just puts notification back into the app that the job's been completed back to the customer. Once the customer sees that and they're happy with the job, then they release the funds directly to the tradie. So it's a pretty straightforward process.
I'd imagine the app would be of interest not only to tradies, but also to other service providers like landscapers, interior designers and cleaners.
Yeah, very much so. We've had a few other business areas that have contacted us and been in touch and said, can we use it for our business? Because we're finding, we had even an interior design company, they do a lot of quotes and everything, which costs them money. And they're finding that once they've done the job, there's a bit of apprehension for one way or another, and vice versa. So they thought that a nice platform that they can use where the funds are safe and available once the job's been completed, that they can use that for that and also for car sales.
Have there been issues because of COVID?
Well, as far as the work for tradies goes, I think it's increasing more than anything. Everybody's spending a lot more time at home. So there's a lot of DIY stuff going on. And we're hearing a lot more where there's been some situations where customers have been getting ripped off by people that are posing as tradies or something like that. I mean, coming around, having a look at a job, getting paid deposits and then vanishing. So I think potentially COVID's building that awareness for people that are at home a lot more, that are wanting to improve their properties and everything, that they need to do it on a safe platform.
Have you noticed more disputes are on the rise with trade?
I think, yes, we've seen, because we get flagged with quite a lot of them now, even all over Australia. So as much as they're right on our radar at the moment, but yeah, they seem to be coming through quite thick and fast at the moment. So it's an opportune time now, I think, for this app to be used and be available to support both the tradies and their customers and give them a safe platform.
There seems to be a shortage of tradies around, doesn't there?
I think there has been for a number of years, and now they're very busy, as we all know. So I think that also the number of tradies that are coming out of the trade schools and everything along those lines need that little bit of help and support to get their business up and running and not fall into the risk of losing money or not being paid and so forth. So there's opportunities there for all the tradies just to make sure that when they do work and that they are doing work, that they're supported and they're comfortable, and also for their families as well.
Now, in view of that, where is the app actually operating? I mean, is it operating all over Australia?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's operating all over Australia. We're Queensland based in Noosa, where we base from. So we're doing a pretty solid launch through Queensland, Southeast Queensland at the moment, and then we'll roll it out through the rest of Australia. But we've got inquiry from Western Australia as well now, and people are starting to see it on social media and so forth. And now that we're having our PR launch at the moment, it's starting to create some attention. So I think it'll move quite quickly throughout Australia.
Obviously, there's an issue for tradies at the moment about getting payments.
Yeah, very much. Well, we see it all the time where, and stories that we get back from a lot of tradies that we talk to all of the time. They'll do a job and then all of a sudden the client may come in and say, well, maybe we can negotiate now after the job's done, or I haven't got the money now, or can I pay it off in a little bit here and a little bit there, or and a variety of different reasons, which ultimately just puts the tradies' financial security at risk, because they're expecting to get paid for the job, and then all of a sudden they're finding that they're not going to get paid, or for one reason or another, or the client wants to renegotiate. So this way the funds are all there. The tradie knows the funds are sitting there available for him. As soon as the job's done, he can get paid.
Oh, but obviously with the COVID environment, finances are very insecure, not only on behalf of the tradie, but also on behalf of the clients. I mean, they'd be looking to save money too.
Very much so, yeah, without a doubt. And also just to make sure that if they employ someone to do some work, that they know that they don't have to pay any money until the work's done, but in knowing the fact that the money is there and available to the tradie. So it's a win-win for both parties. So that the tradie knows that the money's there and available once he's completed the job or she's completed the job, and the customer knows that they don't have to release the funds until the work's been completed.
So tell us about how you developed the app.
Well, it's been going for a couple of years now. We've just seen so many times and seen in the media and everything, many situations of exactly what we've just been talking about tradies not being paid, and also customers not getting the service that they have paid for. So we saw a gap in the market and the service industry there that hasn't really been done to an extent that we've built this app on now. And we've just been developing it over the last couple of years. There's a lot of back-end work because if there's any dispute resolutions that need to be managed, and there's also the two parties, one being the customer and also being the tradie. So it has to be separated in both those areas, because you can go in as a tradie and use the service, or you can go in as a customer and use it as well. So it's quite complex in the background to actually get it operating. But with our team, we've managed to get it operating and working, and it's proving successful.
So how many in the team that developed the app?
So we've got, what have we got? 5 of us on the board. We've got an international app developer that's been working with us to develop the app at the moment. We've got a gentleman who's ex-IBM project management who's been supporting us and working with us on the way through. So he's done a lot of work in this area. We've got a financial banker who's been helping us with the financial backside of it as well. Myself as CEO and our founder as well, and admin staff in the background that are working in the resource and administration area, so that when people come through for any queries or questions or anything like that, we've got a phone number that people can ring and speak to someone if they've got any queries or questions or any issues that they need to resolve.
There's no issue with getting trust?
It's being a new product, that's always going to be something that we continue to work on, and that will as time goes on, people will see the value of that. But yes, the trust seems to be there at the moment. We haven't come across any issues or problems with that to date, and I think really the more people that use it and see the value of it and get some value out of it, then it'll just continue to grow from there. So I think word of mouth is going to be very important for this product, and also we speak to a lot of other organisations and associations that are very interested to see how it goes forward, and also looking at supporting moving forward as well.
Which organisations are you talking to?
So at the moment we've started talking to Mitre 10 that are interested. We're speaking to QBCC that are very interested in the product as well. Car sales as well we've been talking to. So there's and a lot of trade organisations as well. TAFE colleges for young people coming through. We'd like to expand out into all the other areas of business as well. So there's a lot of different trade, plumbers, electricians, etc., landscapers and so forth, that have all got their own network of groups and everything. So we're we'd like to push into those market areas as well.
Well, that'd be quite extensive. Now, you're looking at expanding in Australia, but I mean, there's potential for you to move into places like New Zealand as well, isn't there?
Very much so, yeah, very much so. And we've even had inquiry from Singapore as well of someone over there who's seen it and is very interested because they see it's a massive problem internationally as well. There's a lot more work, I think, involved with the standards and what needs to be done as far as the legalities going internationally. But yes, it's certainly on the cards without a doubt. What we'd like to do is get it up and running beautifully in Australia and then expand out from there for sure.
So when do you see you'll be in a position to start expanding overseas?
Well, I'm hoping within 12 months we can have a substantial base and a lot of data and history on the app of how it's been operating, any little issues we need to resolve and evolve over the next 12 months, and then I think we can start pushing that. But that's our plan. Earlier the better, I think, and it's such a service that's so viable and usable for everybody that if it grows a lot quicker and we are set up and able to do it earlier, then we certainly will.
Well, Andy, it's been terrific talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Leon. Great chatting with you.
Now let's talk to economist Nicholas Green.
Okay, Nicholas, there was some discussion last week about using forced savings to help fight inflation. Apparently the idea goes back a long way. Tell us what the idea is.
So in 1940, I think it was, Maynard Keynes, the famous economist who wrote the general theory and basically invented macroeconomics, had published his book, The General Theory, in 1936, and that was, of course, a book about how to get out of the slump, how to get out of the Great Depression. And now he had a completely different challenge, which was how to fund World War II. There was no depression. Britain was producing everything it possibly could for the war effort. So the problem was then something quite different. The problem was this prospect of inflation. And so what Keynes suggested was that rather than tax people or put interest rates up, that their wages be that we confiscate part of their wages, but we tell them that we're putting those wages, that we're using those wages to buy war bonds effectively, and that they'd get that money back when it was possible for them to spend without fostering inflation. So that was how Keynes was using his new ideas and showing that they were relevant not just in getting out of a slump, but in moderating a boom.
Well, you proposed this idea in the late 90s. Take us through the logic of it.
So I had just arrived at the Business Council in 1997, and the Business Council was saying, we want new ideas. And I said, well, we have a superannuation system, we have compulsory saving, and we should use that system to moderate the economic cycle. So if we are trying to stimulate spending, we might ask people to contribute slightly less. And if we are wanting to restrain the economy, we might say, well, now is a good time to make people contribute a little bit more. And this so this is something which Gareth Hutchins from the ABC rang me about a couple of weeks ago and said, what do you think of this idea? And I said, well, I argued it 20 years ago. And in fact, the Business Council argued it in a paper that I developed for it.
So it's basically creating a system of savings.
Well, we have the system of savings. It is noticing the fact that we have compulsory savings and then saying, well, that's a bit like interest rates. It's a bit like taxing and spending, and it's something which affects the macroeconomy. So we should use it not just to get people to save for their retirement, but there will be times when it's particularly good for them to do a little more saving for their retirement, and other times when it's harmful to do that much saving for their retirement because we need to get the economy going. So we need to consider that in running this system of compulsory savings. We should consider that through the cycle.
What's the mechanics of it? What's the mechanics of it? How you do this with fiscal policy, for example?
So what I was proposing was that we broaden the base of macroeconomic policy. Now, we mainly use interest rates, and the reason we use interest rates is because it's easiest to use interest rates. As Philip Lowe said recently, interest rates are a blunt instrument, but they're nimble, which sounds like a very strange thing to say. But what he meant was that the rate of interest, the overnight cash rate, can be changed literally overnight. Whereas if you want to change spending and taxing, you have to take that through the parliament, and might take you months. You mightn't get what you want, but you can be pretty sure that you'll get it at the wrong time, because it might be 6 months before you take a measure, and then it will be the wrong measure. So what I suggested was that in addition to fiscal policy, we have something. The Medicare levy is a good example. You could give the Reserve Bank some ability to manipulate the Medicare levy up and down so that it can calibrate fiscal policy to the cycle. In other words, so it isn't just using interest rates. So it isn't just interest rates that it uses to moderate the cycle. It is also it also has that option. And then the other one is super. Now, with super, we have employers paying super. So I suggested that to the extent that you want to vary this in the short term, that amount should be paid directly by employees, so that we take the money, so that they see the money coming out of their pocket or going into their pocket in the short term. So those are the mechanics of it.
But some people actually want their parliaments to ratify taxing and spending decisions, don't they?
Well, they do, and that's why Parliament would need to set this up. So it's, it happens that Parliament delegates decisions on the overnight cash rate to the Reserve Bank, and what I'm suggesting is that Parliament delegate the ability to slightly vary tax through the cycle to a body like the Reserve Bank, or indeed to the Reserve Bank. So Parliament's in charge. Parliament's doing it on behalf of the people. If the people really want something as inefficient as the Parliament getting in the way of using fiscal policy to help manage the cycle, then you will then you can't use it. So we'll get worse outcomes, and I don't think the Australian people want that.
Well, how would this address inflation more effectively than raising interest rates?
Well, what we've got at the moment is we've got a central bank raising rates. It doesn't know whether it's increased them enough. It might have increased them too much, because monetary policy has famously long and variable lags. Monetary policy works through a substantial channel is expectations and investment, and we don't know what the recent rate rises will do to those things in 6 months and 9 months' time. We do know what happens when we tax people or we pay them money on a one-off basis. So it's much more effective, and it's also just this, your listeners will be familiar with this idea that if you broaden the base, you lower the rate. In other words, that's in tax policy. The more people you tax, the less you have to tax them. It's the same here, in that we have three potential instruments. If we only use one, then we have to use it more. We have to have higher interest rates, and that's a problem, not just because it's inefficient and it's unfair, but it's also much chancier than these other instruments where we know we've got a much better idea of what we're doing and the effects of what we're doing than we do with monetary policy.
Now, why have we? This goes back to the time of John Maynard Keynes.
Yeah.
So,
right.
why have we done so little with these ideas?
Well, that is an interesting question, Leon, and it is the bane of my life, because I come up with ideas from time to time. I think I wasn't aware when I was producing these ideas in the 90s that Keynes had produced something very similar in How to Pay for the War in 1940. So, but I guess there is a tremendous lack of confidence in our public life where, well, I can't tell you the number of times I've been asked, well, is there anywhere else where they've done this? Now, it's a perfectly good question. But if you tell people, well, there aren't that many other places, there's one. I mean, Singapore does what I'm talking about as far with savings policy from time to time. But we talk about ideas as if they're part of the entertainment. We don't take them very seriously. And the one time we did, which was in the sort of first 8 or 9 years of the Hawke-Keating government, we had fantastic policy. So that's what we have to do, but it's we somehow slip out of doing it. And if we can't notice and experiment with new ideas, we'll keep going with the old ones, which is precisely what we're doing at the moment.
Well, Nicholas, thank you very much for your insights, and looking forward to our next chat.
Thanks, Leon.
Need legal information or legal advice? Today's podcast is brought to you by multi-award-winning law firm McDonald Legal, experts in the areas of dispute resolution and commercial and property law. For a free consultation on your legal matter, McDonald Legal can be reached on 03 9070 1107 or by visiting the website www.mcdonaldlegal.com.au. So what's happening in the news? Well, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell opened the door to a larger half-point interest rate increase this month and said officials are likely to lift rates higher than they previously expected to fight inflation in a stronger economy. Mr. Powell's comments during the first of 2 days of Capitol Hill hearings offered his first public acknowledgement that data showing hotter inflation and hiring could lead Fed officials to alter their recent strategy of raising rates in similar quarter-point increments. The latest economic data have come in stronger than expected, which suggests that the ultimate level of interest rates is likely to be higher than previously anticipated, Mr. Powell told the Senate Banking Committee. If the totality of the data were to indicate that faster tightening is warranted, we would be prepared to increase the pace of rate hikes. An Australian tech giant Atlassian has laid off 500 workers, about 5% of its workforce, with a deepening tech wreck hitting the software company led by billionaire co-founders Mike Cannon-Brookes and Scott Farquhar. The Sydney-based Atlassian, which builds team collaboration software, had managed to stave off the cuts impacting the likes of Google, Amazon, Netflix and Facebook parent company Meta, but on Tuesday announced a difficult decision to shed 5% of its workforce. Affected employees will receive 15 weeks of severance pay and can keep their laptops. Their company, which has yet to turn a profit, said in a corporate filing that the layoffs would incur a charge of between US $70 million and US $75 million. Between them, the world's largest tech companies, including Australian tech startups, have laid off hundreds of thousands of workers in recent months amid an economic slowdown. Many tech companies say now they hired too quickly during the pandemic, and other factors including rising interest rates and the ongoing war in Ukraine have forced the tech industry to cut costs. And at its 10th consecutive meeting, the RBA hiked rates by 25 basis points, increasing the cash rate by 3.6%. It returns the cash rate to its highest level since May 2012. The RBA said further tightening of monetary policy will be needed to ensure that inflation returns to target and that this period of high inflation is only temporary. And the impact of rising interest rates and the slowdown are having an emotional impact on Australians, according to Commonwealth Bank Australia research. More than half the bank's retail customers describe themselves as being extremely concerned about the rising cost of living, with a third claiming rising expenses have already had a significant impact on their lifestyle and spending behaviour. Renters are feeling the pinch slightly more than owner-occupiers, but both cohorts say grocery bills and utilities are their biggest worry. Just over half of retail customers are spending less on socialising, eating out or entertainment, while 49% have started buying cheaper grocery items. SME owners are adjusting their personal spending, cutting non-essential business expenses and raising prices to weather the storm. And industry and retail super funds recorded negative annual returns of minus 5.5% in 2022 compared to 12.9% the year before, as they felt the bite of the broader economic downturn. This slowed the $3.4 trillion superannuation system's overall growth, data from the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority revealed, and its asset pool value grew just 2.5% over the year, despite contributions jumping 11.1% in the same period. But superannuation investment experts expect funds to rally quickly, noting that the sector rarely records 2 poor years in a row. And Rio Tinto will pay a $15 million civil penalty to settle an investigation by the US Securities and Exchange Commission related to an alleged bribery scheme involving a consultant in Guinea. The company, one of the world's top iron ore producers, has been fined for violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by the US SEC. Rio Tinto said it would pay the charges without admitting to or denying the SEC's funding that it violated books and records. And 1 in 3 Australians have started a small business or side hustle since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, or plan to start one in the next 12 months, according to a new research study just released by the Commonwealth Bank. The research reveals that of those surveyed, 9% of these entrepreneurs started a business between March 2020 and January 2022, while almost twice as many, 16%, have started trading in the past 12 months, highlighting what the bank called sustained entrepreneurial activity among Australians since the COVID pandemic. The bank points to Australian Bureau of Statistics data, which also shows new business entries increased 19.7% in the 2022 financial year, significantly higher than average, reflecting workplace changes during COVID and hobbies morphing into side hustles, as well as opportunities in sectors struggling with labour shortages. And a slowing Australian economy has stalled women's financial progress for the first time in a decade, as higher interest rates weighed on female employment. The Financing Women's Index, which measures the economic progress of women and the time it will take to reach gender equality in Australia, slipped 0.1 points to 76.2 out of 100 in the final quarter of 2022. While the decline is marginal, even the smallest backward step on this journey is a large policy failure, independent economist Nikki Huntley said in the report released on Monday. The fact that women didn't benefit as much as men during 2022 from the economic stimulus from COVID is an indictment of those specific policies, as well as broader policies aimed at gender equality. Weakness in the jobs market amid higher interest rates appeared to have weighed on the index and set back progress in closing gender gaps in employment and underemployment, said Financy, which provides software aimed at helping organisations improve performance on diversity, equity and inclusion. The employment subindex fell to 71.5 points from 71.9 points. And the makers of Australia's first locally designed and built hydrogen-powered truck say it will be towing cars and potentially collecting garbage this year in a rollout they believe could spur a shift away from the highly polluting diesel vehicles. Hyzon Motors says the 27-tonne truck it will unveil at its headquarters in Noble Park in Melbourne's southeast on Monday is an Australian first and shows the trucking industry can go green. Electric models made up 10% of new car sales globally last year, but heavy vehicles have been harder to turn green. The US headquarters of Hyzon is one of several startups betting that hydrogen fuel cells are a more viable option than rechargeable batteries, which are large and heavy and need downtime for recharging. Hyzon established an Australian outpost in 2020 to capitalise on the wealth of industry talent left behind when Holden, Ford and Toyota shut down their local operations, and has grown to a team of just over 50 engineers, fabricators, welders and designers. The truck will go into commercial trials this year, with 3 on order from the RACV-owned towing company Nationwide Group, and discussions are underway with waste management groups and other potential operators. Trucks produce about 4% of Australia's carbon emissions, and there's growing concern about the impact on public health of the country's relatively old and dirty truck fleet. Diesel fumes are now recognised as a carcinogen, with fine particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide also causing heart disease, stroke, diabetes and childhood asthma. And with the federal government set to unveil its national EV strategy within weeks, data from the Australian Automobile Association reveals affluent motorists from the inner suburbs have embraced the move away from internal combustion engines. But with the price of EVs in Australia mostly over $50,000, with 10 models available for more than $100,000, they've also become a status symbol for wealthy inner city residents who want to show they care about the planet, at the same driving what is essentially a luxury car. Data compiled by the AAA's Electric Vehicle Index, which went live on Sunday, revealed the Victorian postcode 3170 Mulgrave and Waverley Gardens has the highest number of registered EVs with 281. This was followed by the postcode 2000 Sydney CBD, Barangaroo and Dawes Point with 241 registered. Then the Queensland postcode 4217, which includes the wealthy Gold Coast suburbs of Chevron Island and Isle of Capri with 184. The Victorian regional town of East Sale, near Lake Wellington, had the highest penetration of EVs at 4%. Up to the end of January last year, there were 34,536 registered EVs in Australia, comprising 10,542 in New South Wales, 9,572 in Victoria, 7,350 in Queensland, 3,324 in Western Australia, 1,574 in South Australia, 1,377 in the ACT, 757 in Tasmania, and 78 in the Northern Territory. To the AAA's heat map, showed EV vehicles are never far from the centre of areas with large populations. And Teal independents are preparing to push Labor for tougher action to end federal politics jobs for mates culture by creating a new commission for merit-based appointments and mandatory selection panels. Mokella MP Sophie Scamps will table a private members bill on Monday designed to introduce safeguards to public appointments, such as the new National Anti-Corruption Commission boss and future government boards and tribunal members. Designed in collaboration with the Centre for Public Integrity, the bill will be supported by Indi MP Helen Haynes and independents in the House and Senate. It would involve ministers being given a short list of at least 3 qualified candidates. They would be required to select from the list without adding possible political appointees as allowed under current rules. Even more stringent requirements would be added for roles considered as significant integrity appointments. For appointments to bodies such as the Australian Electoral Commission, Office of Public Prosecutions and the Australian National Audit Office, a former Supreme Court judge would be part of the selection panel. Diplomatic appointments would not be included in the plan. Labor has attacked the former Morrison government for politicising a slew of government appointments, and a report by the think tank, the Grattan Institute, last year found political appointees occupied more than 20% of federal board positions. And the Chief Executive of Australia Post said the Postal Service is likely to develop a broader footprint over the next 5 years as the company considers new store formats beyond the traditional post office. With the federal government now reviewing Australia Post, with the review outlining a range of ideas from increasing stamp fees to reducing the frequency of letter deliveries to sustain Australia Post as snail mail declines, Chief Executive Paul Graham said he expected its physical presence to grow in coming years as Australia Post trialled new ways of sending and picking up mail. There is still a strong appetite for buying gift and birthday cards at a local post office, but the company is focused on working out the needs of different areas so it can better target services it provides, Graham said. Along with letter and parcel deliveries, Australia Post operates a vast network of more than 4,300 post offices across the country. These processes bill payments, sell gift cards, phones and general merchandise and accept passport applications. The group's 2,513 post offices in rural and regional areas have a heightened importance, providing services and goods where fewer other retail options are available. And Pacific National says it will step in for Scott's refrigerated logistics customers after the freight operator collapsed and its receivers said they were unable to guarantee deliveries to major supermarkets. Anchorage Capital Partners, which acquired Scott's in 2020, called in administrators last week before creditors appointed Quarter Mentha. Scott's was acquired by Anchorage from ASX-listed Eagers Automotive for $75 million and is contracted to deliver refrigerated goods for Coles, Woolworths, IGA and Aldi. It competed alongside Linfox, Lineage, Americold and Lindsay. Many of its customers are also small and medium-sized businesses, some based in Queensland's north. A last-minute sales process has failed, although some assets are expected to be sold later this week. With the loss of a major national refrigerated trucking player, Pacific National said on Monday that it would draw on the experience of dealing with COVID-19 supply chain chaos to manage the instability triggered by the collapse of Scott's. Pacific National Chief Executive Paul Scurra said it was important to keep the refrigerated network intact, adding rail could pick up more coal containers known as reefers to protect the continuity of complex supply. And Coles has conceded to suppliers at a recent forum that its customers are feeling the pain of rising interest rates and cost of living expenses and are rushing to take advantage of sales and promotions to help stretch their household budgets further. At a forum held by the nation's second largest supermarket chain late last month, Coles executives revealed to its food and grocery supply base the attraction of value offers, with a sales promotion launched in January triggering a 22% spike in sales for those marked down groceries. The suppliers were told that the second iteration of Coles' Dropped and Locked campaign, which put more than 300 essential grocery items on discount, resulted in a 22% lift in a mix of sales and volumes for those basket of sales goods. Coles executives also said the impact of inflation was reflected in a shift by consumers to cheaper foods, such as trading down to cheaper cuts of meat or more affordable proteins such as chicken. Coles told the suppliers that customer trust on the issue of value was becoming more crucial and involved keeping prices down and building customer trust via its Dropped and Locked campaign, while private label groceries also played a role. The reporting season shed a light on the growing fickleness of the consumer in the wake of 9 months of interest rate rises, with expectation of further increases to follow and other cost of living pressures. And a new cyber criminal gang called Medusa is using a range of tactics, including pretending to be a cybersecurity professional, to grow its profile as it hacks into more businesses, including in Australia. BGH Capital-backed cybersecurity firm CyberCX has found at least 20 victims of so-called double extortion operations carried out by Medusa since January the 11th, including in Australia and the Pacific. Double extortion is a common cybercriminal gang tactic, both encrypting and stealing data, so companies cannot access their files and face the threat of hackers releasing it publicly. It is used as leverage to force businesses to pay a ransom. It is unclear where Medusa is based, but most cybercriminal gangs are in Eastern Europe and Russia. Catherine Manstead, Director of Cyber Intelligence Public Policy at CyberCX, said Medusa was not using a traditional hacker method of getting into companies' system via phishing, where links in emails open the doors for malicious software. Medusa is hitting a range of sectors across manufacturing, telecommunications, energy, hospitality and professional services. It posted about an Australian data breach on February the 2nd and has also attacked businesses in the United States, Indonesia, Singapore and Tonga. Ms Manstead said there was enough difference between how Medusa and other cybercriminal groups operated to give CyberCX confidence it was a new group. Medusa was highly experienced and appeared to include hackers who had worked before in different criminal groups. CyberCX found several social media messaging accounts across Facebook and Telegram that it believes are operated by Medusa. And that's it for this week. And next week I'll be talking to Dr. Sanjay Warrior about the business of healthcare during the pandemic. And I'll be talking to EY economist Sherelle Murphy about Australia's GDP and Apple. This show was brought to you by multi-award-winning law firm McDonald Legal, experts in the areas of dispute resolution and commercial and property law. For a free consultation on your legal matter, McDonald Legal can be reached on 03 9070 1107 or by visiting the website www.mcdonaldlegal.com.au. In the meantime, you catch me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. And if you want, leave a comment. For the most exclusive access to leading economists and business leaders from around the world, subscribe to Talking Business on the Apple Podcast Store or on my website, leongettler.com. Wishing you all a safe and